We were all set.
Thank you. Welcome to a meeting of the Town of Barnstable Comprehensive Financial Advisory Committee. Today is January 23rd, 2023. This meeting is being recorded by the Town of Barnstable and will be broadcast on Channel 18 after the meeting has concluded. The agenda for this meeting is available on the town website. Chuck, will you call the roll, please?
I will. Lillian?
Here.
Wendy?
Here.
Jackie?
Here.
Neil?
Here.
And Chuck is here. I don't think Hector's here, but I'll say Hector. Okay, but we do have a quorum.
Thank you very much. The first item of business is to look at the minutes of the December 19th meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of the December 19th meeting. Are there any comments or corrections? Not hearing any. Chuck, will you call the roll, please?
I will. Lillian?
Yes.
Wendy?
Yes.
Jackie?
Here.
Neil?
Here.
And Chuck is yes.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody here from the public who would like to make a comment? Not hearing any, we're going to move directly to our new business, which is a review of the FY24 capital projects. We have both MEA and DPW here. And so we will begin with Derek Lawson, who's with MEA. It's yours.
Okay.
And Lillian, I'm sorry to interrupt, but just so you know, Hector said he'll be on in about 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
Lillian, if you don't mind, while we're waiting, Derek, we've got your stuff queued up in our presentation. Do you want us to run that through? And
Sure, that'd be great.
We can let our project managers talk it through.
No, that's great. I watched your last meeting and you chose the right to kind of join up tonight because DPW does all the project management on MEA projects. So there's good planning. And yes, I appreciate that, Rob.
Well, so whenever you're ready, if you want to wait for Hector, we can. If you want, we can have Griffin bring up the presentation and then we'll have a conversation.
Oh, that'll be great.
And so let's go.
All right, I'll go ahead and share my screen then.
Good. This
So
is
while he's doing that with me tonight, just for the public's edification, is Griffin Bowden, the town engineer, and Mark Marinaccio, the town architect. They're the principal project managers, though they have people that work for them that run sub-projects on all of these. The way we've got this queued up tonight is MEA first. So we'll go through the MEA projects first. Then Derek can break left if he wishes. And then we'll go through the DPW projects, if that works for everybody.
That sounds great.
Okay, Griffin?
Okay. Okay, let's go through the MEA projects then.
Very good. First project we have tonight is the Scudder's Lane boat ramp reconstruction. This is a request for $496,000 for the replacement of the existing failing boat ramp and replacement with a new boat ramp at the end of Scudder's Lane. The project will also replace a failing revetment, provide some ADA improvements and additional stormwater structures and repaving of the parking area. As you'll see in the next picture, the boat ramp is in very poor condition. It's frankly dilapidated and in need of repair. This area is used heavily for both recreational and commercial shell fishing. And this request will fund construction of the reconstruction. This is a picture of the existing ramp, which I think speaks to the need of this project and replacement of this ramp. Derek, you have anything you want to add to that?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. It is very busy boat ramp used a lot by commercial boaters as well as recreational boaters. So it's a very, very busy boat ramp.
Is that your number one priority?
This was our number one priority, correct?
Okay, thank you.
I
Lily.
just have a quick question on the stormwater
Yes.
Engineering. I just don't know how all that works. I know some of the storm water engineering and some of the other boat ramps, streets work and some don't. So I'm just a little curious as to what goes into that, how they make sure that actually the drainage goes into where they want it to go.
Sure, appreciate the question. So I don't have a full site plan with me tonight, but I'll try to explain it from this picture as best I can. So as you're looking up the boat ramp, this would be Scudder's Lane here, and then this is kind of the parking area.
Right.
So approximately under this red, this is actually a DPW vehicle, there's an existing catch basin. But the way the parking lot's graded now, not all the water's getting to it. And Scudder's Lane's it has a fairly significant grade towards the boat ramp. So a lot of Scudder's Lane is bypassing the existing infrastructure on Scudder's Lane, is all coming down, sheeting down the roadway and going straight down the boat ramp, which is probably not helping with the condition of the boat ramp at this point, and certainly not helping with water quality. So as part of this effort, we'll be modifying the grading of the parking lot such that it will be directed towards a new catch basin, an infiltration system that'll be under the parking lot that will the stormwater that comes down the roadway. We'll also be putting in an additional set of catch basins up on Scudder's Lane, try to capture more of the stormwater coming from Scudder's Lane to try to minimize what is actually bypassing and going down the boat ramp.
And so there's engineering that goes in to make sure that the drainage line actually hits the site that you want it to hit.
That's correct. Yep. So we'll look at the topography and we'll design the parking lot and the boat ramp such that the topography is working for us to direct the stormwater towards the catch basin inlets. And then it will go into a system that's below graded into the ground.
Great,
So-
thank you.
You're going to put a catch basin before you get to the ramp.
That's correct. It'll be roughly in the location it is now, but the way we'll modify the grading around the ramp will direct all the stormwater better to the new catch basin and new system. And then the additional catch basins we plan to put a little further up Scudder's Lane will help reduce how much stormwater is actually getting there. So the combination of those two will be a significant improvement.
And is all that included in the 496?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Lillian, I have a quick question, if you don't mind. Griffin, that looks like it's a picture at low tide. What are our tidal events there? How much are we having to modify the engineering because we're anticipating higher tides as we go forward?
Sure, that's a great question. So one of the things we are doing is right in this location, it's hard to see because there's some grass here, but there's actually an old revetment there that's failing. And so one of the things we're going to be doing to harden kind of the parking area will be to replace that revetment. Frankly, if you had a picture of the other side, you see that the parking lot is starting to deteriorate at the edge where the revetment is. So that was one thing we'll be doing to stabilize the parking area. The boat ramp will be designed such that it will function at high tides as well as the significant low tides we have out here. And so that's what we've done to date.
Okay. Any other questions about this project? All right, you want to move on?
I will. Next one is the Little River Fish Passage Restoration. This is actually an evaluation of the Little River, which starts at Lovell's Pond and discharges into Catuit Bay. So this fish passage historically was a vibrant herring run with fish traveling and spawning into Lovell's Pond. There are a number of culverts and other obstructions along the route that have been put in over the years that actually preclude fish from getting to Lovell's Pond at this point. Working with DMF, our MEA division of natural resources, had done a study of Lovell's Pond and found that the conditions were favorable to support spawning habitat there. And so this reinvested our interest in evaluating the obstructions to fish passage along Little River to understand them, and identify ways to reinvigorate fish passage along this river. As we have been investigating this internally, it became pretty clear that we needed to get some expert help looking at it. We've identified the current obstructions, but we need to have somebody who starts looking at it and coming up with options for improving them, such that fish passage could be restored. We have had conversations with the Cape Cod Water Resources Protection and NRCS, and this project, a couple of the locations that are identified in this project are identified on their prioritization list. So that puts us in good position for grant funding for the actual construction and potentially design of these efforts. But the evaluation phase really needs to be completed to identify a comprehensive restoration plan for this potentially vibrant fish habitat.
Thank you.
Here's a couple pictures here. This picture up here just kind of shows the Little River. And then along here, there's a couple of the obstructions that are along the way, culvert, another culvert. And then this is actually a pipe that exists in Lovell's Pond that is filled in, broken, and no longer functioning. So there's actually the water from the pond at this point that's entering into Little River. It's all basically groundwater fed at this point. So there's not currently a hydraulic connection.
I see. Does anybody have any questions or comments about this one?
My only question, just to follow up on something Lillian asked, should I assume that you're going to do these in order from, highest priority down? Is that
That's
the way?
correct.
Okay,
That's correct. Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, we're ready to move on then.
Very good. The next project is a fish passage project as well. This is the Rosa Lane Fish Passage culvert design and permitting. Rosa Lane is a road that bisects the Marston's Mills River, and there is a very small culvert that goes underneath Rosa Lane. It's a small private road that is a restriction for fish passage along the Marston's Mills River. The Marston's Mills River is an active herring run. It supports the town's very large amounts of fish migrate through the run every year. I think about 80,000 were counted at the last counts that we had. This culvert is undersized and it's a restriction. It basically it slows down the fish in getting to where they would like to go. And in order to improve this fish passage, this culvert would need to be replaced with a larger culvert that will make it easier for the fish to migrate upstream through this choke point. This project is also identified on the Cape Cod Water Resources Protection project prioritization list, which puts it in a good position to be funded via grants from NRCS. We spoke with them as recently as a week or two ago about this project, and they're excited to get going on potentially funding this, which is great for design and construction. It should be noted that this roadway is a private road, so there will be some easements that would need to be acquired in order to make the project viable. But we feel that that's something that will be achievable, and some of those conversations have already happened, at least initially. So these are just some pictures of the culvert in question. It's located right here. It's very small. We'd be replacing this with a larger culvert that'll make it easier for the fish to migrate.
I see that you're going to expend $1 million next year. Is that where we're going to try to get a grant?
That's the anticipated cost of construction. So this 225,000 is what we're really expecting will be our match. Yeah, so it's generally a 25-75%. Although there's some costs in there that can be a little bit different than the 25-75. So we expect that our cost share will be 225, and that the cost of the grant will be about $1 million.
Okay.
Can I ask
any questions?
Well, I was just going to ask in general, from a prioritization standpoint, does the availability of grants impact the prioritization of the projects? In other words, if I can get a grant, am I more likely to prioritize it to take advantage of money that might be available, or are they two completely separate topics.
Right. So I think ultimately, the prioritization, the initial round of prioritization is done based upon need for the project, right?
Right.
And then when we sit down and actually start going through all the projects and trying to make decisions on what projects may actually be recommended to be funded, certainly the ability to potentially get grant funding or being in good position for grant funding or being noticed that we will likely get grant funding for a project generally helps with the prioritization.
Got it. Thank you.
Mark, if you have anything else you want to add to that, but
that's exactly what I was going to say, Griffin. Yeah, when grant funding opportunities present themselves, we move things up on the priority list in order to get those grant funds.
Got it. Thank you.
if there aren't any more questions on this one, I'll move on to the next project.
Yes, please.
Great. One more fish passage project. This is the Lake Elizabeth Fish Run Dam and Culvert Improvement Project. So this is a location, Lake Elizabeth, that for a number of years has actually not seen any herring as a result of barriers that have been identified. There are two significant barriers right now that are precluding fish from getting into Lake Elizabeth. And that first one is a culvert that's underneath Lake Elizabeth Drive, which is undersized and generally impassable by fish. And if fish do get through, the second obstruction is the current dam and fish ladder are frankly in a state of disrepair. So this request will cover the design and permitting of this project. This is another project that we've had conversations with NRCS about. It is not currently listed on the Water Resources Protection Prioritization list. However, we expect that there will be interest in this project moving forward once it gets to approaching shovel ready. So as such, we added it into the list this year and recommend proceeding with it. So this kind of shows, this picture on the right kind of shows the system. So in this location here is the culvert. This is Lake Elizabeth Drive, Lake Elizabeth, Red Lily Pond.
Right.
Our south would be Colville's Beach and Craigville Beach over in this area. This is the culvert in question that currently is restricting fish from passing. And then once they get into this area here, there's an existing fish ladder, which you can kind of see over here, which is in a state of disrepair. So this is a picture of the culvert and the fish ladder. This picture doesn't do a great job of showing the disrepair, frankly. Some other pictures I've seen make it quite a bit worse. Any questions on this one?
Griffin, it's Paula. I just have a general question. Who actually originally constructed all these fish ladders? Was this a town activity, or were there other more volunteer activities to create these ladders?
That's a good question. I appreciate that. In this particular location, I think that's actually a complicated question because I've gone back through some historical files we have, and I know that there was in the past there have been some town projects. However, I think there have been some private projects as well. So I don't know the full history of when or who built this. I'd have to go back through my notes on that. But generally speaking, for the most part, they're a combination of, for instance, Rosa Lane. When that private road was built, a culvert was put in so that the road could go in. I assume that was done privately. This one I think was a combination of town and private, and some of the other ones may have been done by the town or privately or just have occurred over the years. So I don't have a great answer for you there, but that's about my understanding of the current situation we have with these.
Just a quick follow-up. Are we in violation of any state or federal regulations if we don't have working fish ladders? Or, I know that it's a big issue out west that, if the culverts and all that, it's opposition to, I guess it's Clean Water Act, but I'm not sure. So I just didn't know if we're in a position to have that bearing down on us at all.
Yeah, so I'm gonna defer this question to Derek in a minute, but my understanding is that we are, as the local agency, required to manage and make sure that these fish are able to navigate these fish runs. And so the MEA staff is charged with doing that. This particular fish run's a little different. In talking with state staff, because of these barriers, they kind of understand that It's not a viable run at the moment, but I think there would certainly be interest in having it viable again. Derek, hopefully I didn't botch that too much. If you have anything more to say on that one.
No, you're right on track, Griffin. That's exactly the reason why.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, Griffin, move on.
All right. All right. This next project is a project that was funded last year for design and permitting, and this is the construction request, and this is the McCarthy's Landing dinghy dock construction request. This request is for $295,000 to replace the existing dinghy dock that's affixed to the pier at McCarthy's Landing. The dinghy dock is utilized by residents effectively to tie up the small vessels or dinghies in order to access the moorings that are out in the mooring field in the Centerville River. You may remember from last year when we discussed this project, upon researching the dinghy dock, well, the dinghy dock was found to be in a state of disrepair. And so upon researching the dinghy dock, it was determined that there wasn't actually an active permit or a license for it. And so we're in the process of resolving that issue through our permitting and design process. However, there are some improvements needed as well. There is not safe access to this dinghy dock. So the replacement would propose to include a gangway, which would allow for safe access down to the dinghy dock rather than having to climb a ladder, which can be unsafe in certain situations. And so some minor deficiencies to the existing pier were identified in our evaluation, and we'll make those as part of this project as well. That's mostly decking of the surface of the pier. Some of the boards are in need of replacement and some care. So here's some pictures. Upper pictures show the dinghy dock, but the upper left shows it best. So you can see there's a number of small vessels and dinghies tied up to that dock. It's used pretty regularly, pretty often. I'm sure Derek can speak better to the use, but I've in my times out there seen this heavily used. And access down to it again is from a ladder that's mounted on the side of the pier, and not exactly the safest situation. So we would look to install a gangway that's similar to the gangway down at this slip at the end. So that's the project, and if there's any questions on this, I'd be happy to take them.
So could we do both the dock and the lead in for $295,000?
That's correct. Yep. So we would be replacing this, installing the gangway down to it for access purposes, and then replacing some of the decking on this pier that needs to be replaced and some other minor improvements.
Griffin, will this have to go before a Conservation Commission for permitting?
Yes, as well as the state.
All right. And then who has access to the dinghy dock? Is it a first come, first serve? Is it less than 24 hours? Are there people who can tie up for weeks? Or how is this resource divided up?
I will refer that question to Derek.
Yeah, I was going to take that one for you, Griffin. So just beyond those dinghies, I don't know if you can see them, rather small. There are vessels tied out on moorings out there. That is part of the Town of Barnstable mooring program. We rent or we permit those moorings yearly, and the dinghies are the primary access point for the folks to get out to those moorings. So in the process of bringing this into compliance, these folks now, starting next year, would have to purchase a small vessel permit, which gains them access to that dinghy and then to their mooring. Folks without a permit, they would not be able to tie up there. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and so a percentage of the budget for this project would come from your enterprise account? Or all of it?
No, this is, the moorings is a general fund program.
General fund? Okay.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Next.
Right. The next project is the Katuitt Town Dock structural improvements. This request is for $100,000 for design and permitting. In 2021, an assessment of the Katuitt Town Dock determined that the allowable weight should be restricted to about 10,000 pounds. And for just some comparison, that's basically like an F-250, Ford F-250. So a normal size vehicle. Truck, but not a large truck, which some of the operations that have previously occurred on the dock were larger and more heavy operations. As a result, the vehicles have been restricted from using the dock, and previous operations for demasting and masting of sailboats used vehicles that were, about 3 times what we found the allowable weight was. And so a follow-up evaluation has also concluded that the dock will require significant rehab or replacement within the next 3 to 5 years due to the condition. And the estimated cost to replace the dock in kind was only about 7% less than the estimated cost to replace the dock with improved load rating. So the proposed cost for construction in the out year would reflect the price to replace the dock with an improved load rating to allow for the historic operations such as demasting and masting of sailboats that have occurred there. Again, this request is for $100,000 for the engineering and permitting for this project. These are just some pictures of the facility.
Yeah, I understand that the Katuitt dock is underwater many times during the year. So I assume that the engineering will take into account the factor of global warming or climate change or whatever phrase you want to use it to make sure that it is above water.
Yeah, can I pile on top of Wendy's question and ask if last month's storm and storm surge changed either the way you approach this dock or the cost associated with it?
So it's a great question. So the current budget is for effectively a replacement in kind with a more structurally sound dock. However, we will certainly evaluate opportunities to increase the elevation of the dock to the extent practical. However, we are working with an existing condition here that we'll have to retrofit. And in order to significantly raise this dock, the project would get significantly more expensive because we would have to raise the roadway in order to tie into the dock. So those are things we'll look into to evaluate all opportunities as we do with every project that is on the coast, certainly always taking sea level rise into account. But the current budget does not anticipate significant raising of the dock.
Does the existing estimate include an increase in the load?
Yes, it does.
What are you gonna, I think you said it was now 10,000 pounds. What do you anticipate the increased load to be?
Yeah, so I don't have a fixed number as to what we anticipate it will be, but the previous kind of vehicles that were used there was about 33,000 pounds. So that would be our low end of our target to make sure that we can accommodate those historic uses. So we would obviously design with a factor of safety, so it would be designed for something larger than that.
Any other comments? Okay.
Yeah, I think it's a great project since Katuitt is the largest mooring field in the town of Barnstable. So I'm really happy that you're proposing changes to the dock.
Thank you. I will move on to the next project.
Thank you.
All right, that actually is the end of the MEA projects.
Okay.
So we're going to move into the DPW projects.
Well, before you do that, do you want to have, Derek, do you have anything you want to throw on this?
No, Griffin, as always, did a great job. If you have any further questions that you can think of, you can always email them to myself. And if something comes up that you need some answers to, feel free.
I just want to add one more thing, Derek, before you leave. Both Wendy and Chuck raised the issue of the increased water levels. And do you think that there will be in the future a study to possibly increase the height of that dock?
I think Griffin said it best. I think any coastal project right now, sea level rise is a concern, and any project moving forward, I think, we would be looking at that. I know we are looking to do some bulkhead work in Hyannis, and that will definitely be taken into account.
Thank you. We appreciate your coming.
Well, thank you for having me.
Okay, moving on then to the DPW. We've got, Griffin's got everything going, and we've got Mark also, Mark.
We do it in
Mark.
very shortly. You'll be able to hear from Mark Marinaccio. I have one more though first, I believe.
Okay,
This is the first DPW project, which is the town's annual public roads maintenance project. This year's request is for $3.75 million, which is actually, it was a level funding request. Actually, it's the same request as last year. This request will improve our public roads, makes one of several different repairs throughout the community. We have a number of roads that are identified to be milled and overlaid, as well as chip sealed, and our typical crack seal program that we do pretty much biannually at this point. In addition, we make significant investments through this program into new drainage. We have a backlog of well over 100 drainage sites at this point that are in need of either replacement, improvement, et cetera. And so every year we invest about $1 million through this program into improving our drainage systems. As part of this program, we also improve curbing and sidewalks in certain areas, and traffic calming and accessibility improvements where warranted.
is there a deferred maintenance schedule for all this?
There is.
Yeah.
Yes. So we do a study every 3 years, which basically drives every foot of roadway, public road that the town has, and it's in the town, and it gets every section of road. So every couple hundred feet gets scored. And what happens there is that database puts together a score for the community. So it tells us how we're doing with our conditions of our roadways as a whole, but then it also rates each individual road and then prioritizes which roads should be repaired first, given the condition, but also and then we take into account how much is the road used when we need to break a stalemate. So utilizing that tool again that we do every 3 years, we have a good feel as to what roads are priorities and what roads are in good condition.
So given the normal wear and tear of roads without any extraordinary weather problems, can we expect annually to have $3.75 million worth of maintenance?
Yeah, so we've been around that for the last, handful of years. This is the last handful of years we've actually been doing $100,000 increase each year, and this year we scaled back on that and kept it a level funded request. In order to maintain our improvements of our scoring along our public roads, this is the number that we recommend in order to maintain the current condition of roads in the town and try to stay ahead of failing situations like you see in these pictures. The significant backlog we have in drainage improvements as well, that gets costly. And so we like I said, we invest about $1 million through this program each year into drainage, and we still have a backlog that we need to stay on top of in order to keep our roads from draining properly and ultimately not failing. So this is the recommended value in order to continue to stay on top of our roads the way we have been.
Yeah, the 5-year plan seems to increase by very small increments every year. So I think that's a steady and steady way to look at it. Any other comments from anybody? Okay, next.
All right, I'll turn this one over to Mark Marinaccio.
Thanks, Griffin. So this CIP request is for the town hall and school administration structural repairs and some slate roof repairs. About 12 years ago, we spent $3.5 million on town hall to restore the masonry, replace the windows, and to replace the roof. At that point in time, we repointed all of the masonry on the building. Back about 4 years ago, we did a masonry sealer on that project. Every 7 years, that sealer needs to be put on that brick. The brick is a West Barnstable brick. It's a very soft and porous brick, so it absorbs moisture. So to protect the masonry, we install a masonry sealer. It's clear. While we were doing that work, we noticed that there was some movement in the brownstone on the southwest corner of the building. So we did some more examination with architect that we had hired for that resealant project. And we found that there were some cracks inside the building that traveled all the way through that were new. So really, a lot of this money is going to examine that condition and see why it's moving. We're not sure if some of the old hipped rafters are getting tired or what in that building, but there's been some movement to the stone, so we prioritize this. Also with a slate roof, the town hall has a brand new slate roof on the building. We had originally salvaged the Munson black slate that was on the town hall and installed a new slate roof, Canadian black on that building, so that we would use, when we did the restoration on SAB, we used the salvage slates to repair sections of the school administration building roof. Every so often, periodically, you need to do inspection and some slate repairs on the building. So this includes funding to examine those roofs and to replace any slates that are failing or sliding off. Next slide, Griffin. There's a picture of the crack that has migrated to the inside of the building. I will note that all four corners of the building have these cracks. This one is new. The others are painted over and have not moved at all, but this one has moved since we did the repointing. So we really want to take a close look at this and design a repair and reinforcing for this condition.
Thank you. Any comments from anybody?
Not on this particular project, I apologize. I want to go back to the last project in the sense that with the increased rainstorms that seem to be ferocious and scarce, it seems that the drainage needs will need to be increased over time. So I just, in planning going future, I'm not talking about the current projects, but maybe that will be an emphasis of going forward.
Yeah, thank you for that comment, Wendy. And actually, through this program, we have scaled up our percentage of the program towards drainage each year since I've been in this position, out of really necessity, because of the number of locations where we're starting to see failed drainage because it was just installed and a long time ago and outdated, or certain locations didn't actually have drainage. Or they're just undersized due to the increased storms we're seeing. So appreciate that comment, and certainly that is on our radar.
Okay, next.
This project is actually a continuation of the work that we are currently under construction with the school administration mechanical cooling upgrades. We're just finishing up an upgrade to the head end mechanical units, boilers, the hot water system, the heating system in the building, as well as the chiller and cooling system in the building. This project moves that forward and now distributes that energy throughout the building, replacing unit ventilators and condensate drains and piping in the building. So that's what this represents. This is just a continuation of the work that we've been doing in the school administration building. Next slide. They also had an elevator report done a couple of years ago. We have concerns about the existing elevator. This project includes funding to replace that elevator in the building. Have any questions?
Nope.
You see the elevators in rough shape. As far as visually from the inside, needs new finishes. It's a piston elevator. One of the concerns is that for most of these elevator, you can inspect parts, but with piston elevators, you cannot inspect the piston in the ground. The newer piston elevators have a new technology that protects that piston, but the older ones did not have any protection. So that was one of the reasons why we want to replace it.
For those of us who have ridden in that elevator, we think a replacement would be appropriate.
Yes, and just a quick question, what happens if it fails?
We are trying to avoid that from happening.
No, I know, but if,
It has a chugging sound as it goes up.
yes, yeah. But
And well,
if
the elevator gets inspected for all elements that can be inspected. It's hydraulics, so all the hoses and pumps, all that get inspected. So if it started to fail, we would hope that we would notice leaking somewhere. The problem is with the piston elevator, that piston at the bottom of that shaft goes into the ground. There's no way to inspect that. So that was a priority for our engineers.
Yeah, and so because of handicap accessibility, is this a requirement for that particular building?
Yep, yes it is.
Oh. Okay, so it's important to keep that running.
Yes it is.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Thank you.
Okay. Next.
This request is a continuation of our ponds management study program. This request is for $270,000, so it's actually a little bit more than the last handful of years. And the reason why is this year's request is for Woquacket Lake, which is a larger pond and thus will require more work to go into the sampling program that will be undertaken by this program. So these management plans are developed in two studies. The first portion is detailed sampling. So each year we do 2 grab samples within all of our great ponds in town. This will be much more in-depth sampling, more like weekly. We'll also do sediment cores and do other sampling to really understand what is going on in the pond that is resulting in impairment that we're seeing. That data will then all be compiled, and the second phase will be the development of the management plan, which will compile all that data, identify the sources of impairment for the pond, and then recommend solutions and provide cost estimating in order to restore pond health. Again, this year's study is for Woquacket Lake. It's actually also going to include Burst Pond and Gooseberry Pond because they're all connected, and it was felt by our consultant that they should be done together for that reason.
Are we doing this in-house with the sampling, or are we doing it in conjunction with UMass Dartmouth?
We contract with UMass Dartmouth to do this sampling.
Yeah.
For these management plans. We work with UMass Dartmouth to do the annual sampling. So we'll do some of the sampling. They'll do some of it. We have volunteers that do some of it on some of our ponds as well, which is great. But for this particular program, we hire UMass Dartmouth to do it all.
Thank you. Any other comments from the members? Okey doke.
Nope.
Next.
Was there a question? No. Okay.
Okay.
Right. The next project here is also a pond project. This is the Mystic Lake alum treatment. This request is for $195,000 to fund an alum treatment for Mystic Lake. Back in 2010, an alum treatment was completed in Mystic Lake, and it was found through the studies that there were improvements in phosphorus concentrations in the water column, which is a good thing. That improves water clarity as well as water quality in the pond. However, with alum, it doesn't last forever. It's a treatment that is effectively a Band-Aid, right? So a report commissioned by the Indian Ponds Association 2 years ago at this point recommended it was time for another alum treatment. In review of that study, we agreed and found that conditions are such that we are getting to the point where another alum treatment is advisable in order to prevent deteriorating water quality within this pond and potentially blooms of cyanobacteria or otherwise. So therefore, we brought this project forward this year.
How often do you think we have to apply the alum to this particular lake?
Right, so the last treatment was done in 2010. So we got about 12 years out of it. We would anticipate something similar to that. We do plan through our management plan program to do a more detailed study in a couple of years to really understand what the inputs of nutrients into the pond are, in order to try to come up with a more long-term solution to keeping water quality where it should be for this pond. That will more likely look at inputs from the watershed, potentially septic system, stormwater runoff, stuff like that. That was outside of the scope of the study that was done at this point. The study that was done, commissioned by the IPA, really looked at the pond and said the phosphorus and the conditions in the pond are such that we are due for another alum treatment if we want to prevent future water quality issues. So we do have a long-term plan to study this in more depth to try to make it so we don't just continue to put Band-Aids after Band-Aids after Band-Aids on it and have a more holistic improvement. However, at this point, we feel that this approach is sensible in order to prevent issues in the pond.
Is the phosphorus a bigger problem than the nitrogen?
The phosphorus in freshwater ponds is the limiting nutrient. So in freshwater ponds, you find that phosphorus is the issue, whereas in coastal embayments, nitrogen is generally the issue.
Do we have any hypoxia in those lakes?
Some of the lakes we do. I don't know off the top of my head if it was found in this lake, but generally speaking, the reason for alum treatment is to bind the phosphorus that's in the sediment to the bottom of the pond.
Right.
The phosphorus binds to the alum and then basically sits on the bottom of the pond. It doesn't get released unless there are anaerobic conditions at the bottom of the pond. And what the alum will do is prevent it from releasing when there are anaerobic conditions. If the alum doesn't get put in, it releases during the anaerobic conditions, and that's when you start to see the water quality issues. So based upon that, my guess is there was hypoxia found here, but I don't recall. I'd have to go back through the study.
Thank you. Okay, next. Oh.
All right, this request is for $95,000 for a continuation of the town's municipal separate storm sewer system, or MS4 program. The project is intended to continue this program, which will allow the town of Barnstable to maintain compliance with the EPA's National Pollution Discharge Elimination System, MS4 program. This is a program that's mandated by the EPA. Each year, there are tasks that we have to complete in order to maintain compliance with this program. Some of the tasks that we anticipate completing through this request are listed on the slide. I will say this upcoming year, we have to renew our permit, which will effectively expend the existing funding that we have in place for this program. And so at this point, we're in need of additional funds to continue to fund the program moving forward and continue to be able to maintain compliance. This map is actually, it's one of the products that have been that have come out of this MS4 program. And this is an inventory of all of our stormwater facilities in the town, whether it be catch basins, outfalls, manholes, etc. So every one of those dots that you see on the map is one of our stormwater systems that we have in the community. So inventorying all that was certainly helpful and something that was required through the program.
Do we know the locations of increased stormwater?
I'm not sure I follow your question.
Well, because we've had so many such volatile changes in rain, are there places that are perhaps more depressed? In which
this actually comes back to the public roads CIP we talked about earlier, in that we have over 100 locations in town where we have stormwater concerns, whether it be from failing systems or locations that are low lying that do not have systems that have adequate capacity. So those are issues that we're constantly resolving. So we are aware of those locations, whether it be as a result of our own inspections or visual observations, or frankly, a lot of them come from complaints, which is great. Folks will reach out when they identify an issue with a stormwater system. We'll inspect them, and then they get into the queue to be improved.
One other point on that is that you're talking to the admin tech side of DPW right now, which is the engineering, architecture, et cetera. We have the ops side too. So highway has a number of areas that they know of that are low lying, that they do pumping and things of that nature. And that gets pumped back into Griffin's operation to try to feed that drainage need. So both the ops side of DPW and the engineering side of DPW deal with this issue.
Thank you.
That's a great
Any
point,
other
Rob. Thanks.
comments? Okay,
All right. Right, this project is our public bridge maintenance and repairs program. This request is for $500,000. This is a continuation of a program that commenced 5 or 6 years ago at this point, which is intended to make repairs to our bridges that the town are responsible for. So every one of the bridges that are in the town that are within town roadways are the responsibility of the town to make repairs for. Mass DOT has a program where they would inspect all the bridges for us, which is actually great. And rather than us having to hire consultants over and over again to inspect our bridges, every 2 years, Mass DOT does that with their bridge engineers, and they send us a list of deficiencies or concerns that they've identified through those inspections. And then the town is compelled to have to make those repairs in order to continue to have safe bridges. So this program is intended to address the deficiencies that are identified in Mass DOT's inspections. This particular request is anticipating to address some structural elements that have been identified as concerns, railings, concrete decking, some sidewalks, and a number of the bridge abutments actually are seeing some scouring or loss of riprap, which we need to address in order to make sure that the bridge remains stable. So this program is a important investment in these important infrastructure in order to make sure that they stay stable and don't get into a state of disrepair, which results in significantly more investment and much larger dollars in order to replace these bridges.
so it's very much like the public road maintenance that you just keep a constant eye on.
Absolutely. We tried to structure this very similar to the public roads
Right.
program.
Hey, Griffin.
Yes.
Oh, go ahead.
Griffin, the bridge, the drawbridge on Bridge Street over to Oyster Harbor, what is the status of that?
So we 2 years ago we made some very significant improvements to that drawbridge in order to address what were at that point critical issues. A couple of structural members were in a state of failure, frankly. And so we addressed those. We addressed some other safety issues that were there. You'll see in a later slide that we've brought forward another request for improvements to that bridge. That bridge is beyond its design life at this point. And so significant investment in that bridge will be necessary moving forward to continue to have it viable. We do anticipate continuing to study that bridge to understand if continuing to invest in that bridge or starting to think about transitioning to another solution there makes sense. However, at this point, we obviously need to continue to invest in the bridge and make sure it's viable. Each season we have to invest significant resources in maintenance to make sure that it will remain operational throughout the season. And inevitably each year something happens, whether it's an electrical issue or a mechanical issue, that puts the bridge out of service for a period of time during the summer, which obviously causes consternation. And so we continue to keep an eye on that. We do plan to we have brought forward additional design requests for the next set of improvements that need to be made out at that bridge, which are significant mechanical, electrical improvements, and then eventually the bridge needs to be painted in order to continue to provide more life to the steel that's out there.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Was there another question?
No, my question was the same as Hector's, so.
Oh,
that
great.
was Yeah,
Yeah, so in past requests, we had Oyster Harbor's Bridge included in this program. At this point, the investment required for the Oyster Harbor's Bridge itself was kind of made sense to pull that out into its own request. And so you'll see that we had a separate request for that bridge in this year's program.
Okay. Next project.
Right. This request is for $229,000 for design for intersection improvements at the intersection of West Main Street and Pine Street and Barnstable High School. This project would convert the existing intersection into a signalized intersection. About, I think last summer, the engineering department commenced a study to evaluate this intersection due to observations and concerns that we had received from residents about the safety of the intersection. And in doing so, we found that a signalized intersection was warranted at this location. And so this project will recommend bringing forward that recommendation and converting the intersection into a traffic signal with adequate pedestrian equipment, pedestrian curb ramps, improved sidewalks, improved geometry, just to make this a safer location.
I agree. Thank you.
just a quick question.
Yes.
Has there been any study on accidents, or I'm not suggesting this isn't a good project. I'm just curious if, there have been any studies on accidents or pedestrian concerns on this particular project.
Yeah, so as part of the warrant analysis that we did, that was looked at. I don't have the data handy at the top of my head. I can certainly pull that and share that with you if you'd like. But frankly, the volume and the number of conflicts that are seen in this intersection were some of the bigger reasons that we identified this. I don't recall the accident history, but certainly I wouldn't be surprised if it was rather high.
Yeah, I know the intersection, so I understand. I just was curious. The state does all this analysis on certain intersections based on how many accidents occur and whatnot. I just didn't know that had been done for this particular one.
Yeah, like I said, we did an in-house study on this one because it is a town road. So the state didn't undertake this study. This was something that we commissioned internally. And like I said, I don't have the accident data handy, but certainly can share that with you.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, next.
All right, this next project was a continuation of our crosswalk improvements program. About 3 or 4 years ago, we had a similar CIP, which we are continuing to implement to make improvements at crosswalks throughout our town that need safety improvements in order to prevent pedestrian accidents. The particular locations that were identified in this year's request were Main Street and Old Colony, South Street and Old Colony, and various locations on South Street. At this point, we are coordinating this effort with the ongoing planning effort, which is looking at long-term visioning for the greater downtown Hyannis area. And some of these original concepts that we had may need to be modified, but the request here will make improvements to these critical locations that, frankly, at this point, some of them are not overly safe to be crossing as a pedestrian, which is unfortunate. Any questions?
Nope.
All right.
Okay.
All right, this request is for our stormwater improvements at impaired ponds. This is a continuation of a program that we started about 4 years ago at this point, believe it or not. This is a request for $250,000, which will design and construct stormwater improvements in locations that discharge directly into ponds. One of the things we've found through our pond studies is that stormwater inputs into ponds can lead to water quality issues. And we have also found through both conversations with residents adjacent to ponds, but as well as our MS4 mapping and just observations throughout the community, that there are a number of locations throughout the community that stormwater discharges directly into ponds. So this program is a program where we are slowly trying to correct that and install appropriate stormwater mitigation, stormwater management devices in order to prevent stormwater from discharging directly into ponds. This year's program will address 5 sites, one of them at Long Pond, Centerville, Mill Pond, West Barnstable, Garrett's Pond, and Round Pond. And future phases of this will potentially be grant funded. One of the things we like to do with this program is get locations designed and then hopefully try to make our case for grant funding through the various opportunities that are out there in order to try to minimize the cost of the program.
And this would be an ongoing program year after year.
That's correct. It has been for the last 4 years. We have addressed a number of locations at this point, and our list is getting smaller, which is great, right? I don't think this program will go on in perpetuity, but we have certainly a few more years anyway that we have locations that we'll need to address.
Mm-hmm.
This capital improvement is for new columbarium over at Mosswood Cemetery. A number of years ago, we built a columbarium. Actually, Griffin, you go to the next slide. That's the floor plan. The design this is the master plan for the site, and currently there's 3 columbariums that exist on the site. Cemetery is running out of space and is projected to run out of space within a couple of years. So they've requested that we install additional. So we're recommending installing 4 additional on one side with a path, and that's what this project represents. Any questions?
Yes. I know that TFAC provides some money for the Mosswood. Can TFAC underwrite part of this?
There was discussions about that during the CIP discussion process. I don't believe that they're stepping up for this project in particular.
Well, I serve on that committee, so I'm going to ask them at our next meeting whether we can
That would be great.
provide some money for this.
That would be great.
Lily and I did, this is Mark. I did speak to the chair of that committee the other day, and we're going to initiate the next round of funding from the Kirkman Trust Fund. And this is potentially a project that will go before the Trust Fund Advisory Committee as part of that funding application process.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're having a meeting this week. Thank you.
I'll unmute myself. All right, the next project is the Hawes Avenue culvert replacement. So this project is a $131,500 request for design and permitting of a replacement of a failed culvert underneath Hawes Avenue in Hyannisport. Actually, the picture on the next page will show the story, but a sinkhole has occurred on Hawes Ave and directly adjacent in the 2 shoulders as a result of failure of the culvert. At this point, it is not significantly has not resulted in a sinkhole in the roadway because we have, through our highway maintenance department, short up the situation to the extent we can in order to prevent a catastrophic failure of the road. But at a certain point, there could be a catastrophic failure of the road if this culvert is not replaced. And so for this reason, we brought this forward this year in order to prevent that potential issue that could occur. So this picture here shows, this is the marsh side where the culvert comes in the marsh. It crosses the roadway in this location here, and you can see these patch jobs. Those have been the attempts to make repairs to the sinkholes that have occurred as a result of the failure of the culvert that's underneath the road. Culvert goes all the way out to the water, a few hundred feet to the south of here, and basically allows tidal flow into and out of the marsh. You can't really see it in this picture, but over in this area here, there is a sinkhole. It is actually a physical hole that you can look down into the pipe, and is an unsafe condition, potentially for someone who would be walking along the shoulder here. And this is just a situation that needs to be corrected for safety issues. Any questions on this one?
No.
All right.
Any other comments from anybody?
Nope.
Great.
Nope.
All right. This next project is a request for $175,000 for a raised crosswalk in Katuitt. This is for design and construction of a raised pedestrian crosswalk to the south of the intersection of Main Street and Old Shore Road in the village of Katuitt. This next picture shows the location in question. Crosswalk will go in this location. And what this will do is install a raised crosswalk similar to what you see in Barnstable Village and Marston's Mills Village that was installed a couple of years ago. And actually one that's up the street over near the post office in Katuitt as well. This will allow for pedestrians who enter the roadway in this location to become more visible prior to crossing so that folks can see them. We will also be considering the installation of flashing beacons at this location as well, so that anybody who goes to enter the road can do so safely when they go to cross Main Street in this location. Any questions on this?
I assume that's by raised crosswalk. It's like the one that connects the Katuitt post office to the church across the street. That's correct. It's speed bump as well. Okay.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is a project I alluded to a little while ago. This is the Oyster Harbor's Bridge Improvements Project. This year's request is for $450,000 for design and permitting of the next phase of improvements and rehab to the Oyster Harbor's Bridge in order to keep it viable. As I alluded to earlier, the bridge was constructed in 1946. It's a sole access to Grand Island, as everybody knows. And it is effectively beyond its design life. And so significant investment will be necessary in order to keep the bridge operational moving forward. This request is anticipated to address structural issues, but the majority of this request is for addressing some significant mechanical and electrical issues, as well as engineering to support future painting of the bridge superstructure. There are a couple pedestrian accommodations that also need to be addressed that are on the list to do through this program. Some pictures of the bridge that folks are familiar with. Any questions?
Nope.
Great. Mark.
This is a request for $710,648 for a playground in Marston's Mills. Basically, this project, all of this funding is eligible for community preservation funding. We expect probably to go there for the request. We're looking at installing a playground for 2 to 5-year-olds. It'll be designed as a neighborhood playground, not a destination playground. We're hoping to utilize the existing parking at the Marston's Mills School as part of that playground. Griffin, if you show the next slide. So this is the entrance on the left here to the Barnstable School, which we're in the process of demoing. The demolition drawings are almost finished. I expect to put that out to bid within the next month or so. But to the left there is a open space where we're planning to propose the installation of a playground for 2 to 5 year olds. That graphic on the lower right shows the playgrounds in the town. The ones that are X'd out are schools. And so the remaining ones are what's available to individuals who have younger children during the day. So this is important. I guess there was 2 playgrounds originally in Marston's Mills. They've been removed over the years because they were outdated or the equipment was dangerous. So they currently do not have one. And there's a large outcry for a playground in this area. You have any questions?
Nope.
This is a request for funding for the West Barnstable Railroad Depot. We're looking for $102,350 for design this year. This project was originally built in 1910. It's part of the Lombard Trust. The roof has been leaking for a while, and there's some exterior improvements that need to be made. So the actual tile roof is still manufactured, we found out, so we can get actual replacement parts from the same line as the original roof. We're planning to remove the roof, repair damage to the plywood or the plank wood underlayment, and then reinstall the roof on top of it to repair that. Inside, there's some window repairs and some ceiling repairs from where the leaks were, as well as we're looking at the vertical posts that are not original to the building, and we're going to figure out why they were installed and what needs to be reinforced inside to restore that back to its original appearance. Can you show the next slide, Griffin? Oh, that's just my budget. So majority of this would be able to be funded through community preservation, historic preservation funds. That lower right picture is the original drawings. And then you can see the building as today. And that center top photo is a photo of a repair that was made a number of years ago. Any questions?
Mm-mm.
And that is the end of the CIPs for DPW and MEA.
Those are major projects, I'll tell you.
They are. That's a lot.
Thank you so much.
Lily, and if I may, I just want to point out that, there were a significant number of more projects submitted by MEA and DPW as part of the 5-year capital program. But what we presented this evening were projects that have the opportunity for grant funding, CPC funding. They're high usage assets, public safety issues. And so these are the projects that have risen to the top right now. So we didn't have time, obviously, to go through the 70 or 80 so projects submitted between these 2 departments. So we cut the list shorter to offer you a more abbreviated presentation that focused on those projects. As I mentioned previously, if public safety issues, they're high usage assets, they have outside funding availability, and so forth.
These are also the general fund projects as well.
And these are just general fund projects. We didn't get into the enterprise funds either.
Right.
That could be another whole meeting if you wanted to have a separate meeting, or the comprehensive wastewater management plan as well.
Yeah.
And that's
one large project on the list. We have 5 in total, but one large project, which is the Park City Wind sewer route. In anticipation of that route, we would begin I think it's under design now, but we'll be looking for the construction funding for that project in next year's CIP. And that's over a $30 million construction project.
Oh, is that construction project for next year? The $30 million?
The funding request is for next year, yes.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I think what will happen is that the capital subcommittee will begin looking at it and figuring out which ones would qualify for grants and how all this will be funded. Do any members of the capital subcommittee have any comments?
Yeah, and Mark, I missed the comment, the Vineyard Wind. I was putting on my earbuds. I missed the $30 million is for what?
The Park City Wind route, sewer construction along the Park City Wind route.
Right?
Nope, that's project number 2.
Okay.
Right. Okay, are there any other comments?
I think it was really great that you consolidated the projects to be a more concise list, Mark. That was really fantastic.
Yeah, it made a lot more sense too, because they're in tandem. I have one announcement. We have realigned the subcommittees. Both Neil and Jackie have opted to be on the operating budget subcommittee with Chuck and me. So Chuck and I have volunteered to help with the capital.
Oh,
That would be
this-
great.
Yeah, so if Wendy and Hector would like to volunteer to help us with operating, we'd be happy to have you. So, but anyway, that's my little announcement of our realignment. Is there any, Mark, can the schools come on the 13th?
I'll invite them tomorrow and we'll let you know.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything that we need to talk about on the CWMP capital this year?
Lillian,
Yeah,
I want to do a shout out to Mark. He presented to the town council on Thursday night a very logical argument for having to go out for a debt exclusion. And that presentation, Mark, where is the best place to find that?
It's on the town's website under the town council area,
Okay,
the section for presentations, but I can email the committee members.
that'd be great, because
Well,
it really was a good walkthrough.
yes. I happen to have watched it and I thought it was excellent.
And Lillian, I have another obligation, so I'm going to say goodbye to everyone.
Thank
and
you so much
see you
for
in a couple
coming.
weeks. All
Yes.
right, take care, everyone.
Okay. So maybe we could, if you would be kind enough to email the debt exclusion presentation that you made. I mean, I saw it, but maybe other members of our committee did not.
yeah, I wasn't
But it
able
was
to watch
excellent.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was.
I would-
excellent.
Yeah, I would really appreciate it just because
Yeah.
I've been back and forth and all over the place. So that'd be great.
Yeah,
Lillian, are you done with the members of my team so I can cut them loose?
yes, we are. And we're
Yes.
thank you very much.
Griffin and Mark, thanks for your
Coming.
time. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
you.
Griffin. Thank
Thanks,
Mark.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Thank you
Mark.
all. Have a great evening.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Good
bye.
evening.
thanks a lot. Okay, so we are all set if we can get the schools on the 13th.
Correct.
Is there anything
Now-
else to come before the committee?
Just point of information, the school projects listed here. We have 8 projects totaling about $4.5 million. Community Services Department has 5 projects totaling about $7 million. And then we have a whole slew of enterprise funds. So my question is, I guess, what is your priority as far as who you want to meet with at the next meeting? Is it really a school department or is it something else? We could do schools, absolutely.
I'll defer to the capital subcommittee. Hector, Wendy,
Yeah, so Lillian, can I just interject your comment before the DPW people signed off? Chuck and you are volunteering to do what? And this realignment, if you could just clarify that for me.
We are volunteering to help you on the capital subcommittee.
Okay,
So there are 4 of us on the capital subcommittee.
all right.
All right.
Who are the
All right,
other
so-
two, Lillian, besides you and Chuck?
Wendy and Hector.
and Hector.
Wendy and Hector, okay.
Yeah.
And then as far as the operations subcommittee,
It's Neil and Jackie and Chuck and me.
okay.
Yeah.
So I would just, speaking for myself, I'm happy. We appreciate Wendy, and I probably speak for Wendy. We appreciate your input, and I'm happy to assist on the operations committee as need be.
Thank you.
Okay. So Mark, the choices are between the schools, and I'm sorry, I didn't hear the other.
Well, we
I'm
have,
looking-
we have the schools, we have all the enterprise funds.
Yeah.
You know, the airport has quite a few,
Well,
they have 14 projects totaling $35 million. Much of it grant funded, anticipated to be, but you know, that's the biggest one. That's the biggest enterprise fund when it comes to the number of projects and dollar amount.
Yeah.
Water
Well,
supply is pretty significant.
Sorry.
The water supply is pretty significant. That's $65 million of capital projects, 8 projects.
Yep.
So considering the amount of time that we have, I
Yeah.
think we got one more meeting with the opportunity to meet with another department, and I'm not sure if you want it to be the school department or one of these other larger departments that have more requests in terms of dollars and the number of projects.
I speaking for myself, I would gravitate towards the projects with the larger dollars. The water supply one, I mean, that's a very hot topic these days. So I'd be interested to hear about that. Wendy, what do you think?
I think you're right, Hector. I think, I mean, the school committee is great. It's the largest area that we spend on, but, maybe we should look at some other areas that we're less knowledgeable about.
Yeah. I'm just sort of ersatz member of your subcommittee, but I think we should not only deal with the water supply, but the water pollution as well.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Are there any projects pegged for water pollution?
Yeah, there's a
Yes.
rehabilitation program and
Pump
pollution
station.
control. Yep.
Yeah. And Hyannis water mains.
Yep.
So at the next meeting, may I suggest that we have DPW folks back again to talk about the sewer enterprise fund projects, the water enterprise fund projects, and the comprehensive wastewater management program.
Yes, that would be great.
Okay.
That's perfect.
All right. Chuck, you have any comments or suggestions to add to that?
Nope, I think that sounds reasonable. And I guess my only logistical question, Mark, is all of that an either for people time or the time of the meeting? In other words, are we just meet with one and that's it?
No, I think we can cover all 3 of those areas in the next meeting. We'll have
Okay.
them just speak to the projects that they're proposed for fiscal year 24.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that's a good
Probably
idea.
take about as long as it did this evening.
All
Okay.
right.
I think we can get through all 3 of those areas.
Okay.
And who would be presenting, Mark?
It would be the same team, most likely Rob Steen, Dan Santos if he's available, Griffin Bodine, Hans Kaiser. That would be the core group.
Okay.
Sounds great.
Yep.
Okay. Anybody have any other comments or suggestions? Not hearing any. Is there our next meeting is February 13th. Is there a motion to adjourn?
But before we adjourn, can we just talk? I just wanted to follow up on Neil's report that he shared with
Oh,
everybody.
that would be great. Thank you, Neil.
Yes, thank you for doing that, Neil. And I just wanted to highlight some of the things that cause those fluctuations year over year. And it's a couple of things. Sometimes this is a 5-year rolling plan, and sometimes projects get moved if they don't get funded in the year they requested, they get pushed back another year. So that's going to contribute to some of the requests that you see, significant increases that you see in, for example, in fiscal year 25 requests. The project may have been in fiscal year 23 or 24, and it got pushed back to fiscal year 25. Other things contributing to those costs are cost increases, reevaluation of the project, and evaluating the dollar cost estimate on those projects is also a contributing factor. And then new projects pop in. I think there was one water pollution control, solid waste facility improvements. That was a brand new project that came in to play for fiscal year 25 that was not in last year's 5-year CIP. So those are the main reasons that you see significant dollar changes year over year. We've had things like the water filtration plant or straightway filtration plant. The cost of that project went from 15 million to 25 million.
Wow.
And we can have, DPW and specifically Hans Kaiser can speak to why the cost of that project estimate has gone up significantly. So those are the types of things that we're seeing, which would result in those changes that Neil highlighted in his analysis.
Mark, just have a quick question on the CWMP, because, you're going out for the vote. Does it make sense to have more of a media presence to present the benefits to the project as opposed to just the little pamphlet that we did and some of the other things that have already been publicized?
Yes. So, when we're talking about a debt exclusion override vote, if the council decides to go forward with this, this is a public campaign, and so staff committees like CFAC are prohibited from publicly advocating for such campaigns. And so, what's going to happen is if these campaigns, in order for them to succeed, there has to be, usually what happens is a committee is formed of a group of people who are not, town employees or committee members. It's usually a group of interested individuals who want to see this vote succeed in the interest of the benefits that it generates or provides to the community. So I would envision that there would be that type of effort would be brought forward by who remains to be seen, but I would expect that's what you're going to see if the council decides to go forward with a debt exclusion vote.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah, and I think Wendy's question is appropriate because, and Marcus, you and I have discussed, I think this is going to be a controversial issue in town. And I think it's pretty important for the success of CWMP that this vote succeed.
Absolutely, because if it doesn't, and if we are forced to go forward with this program, I don't think not going forward with this program is an option anymore, especially with the DEP regulations that are being redrafted right now and are expected to be issued at the end of this month or sometime in early February. If we decide that we're not going to go forward with funding these projects, then all bets are off. We could be subject to new DEP regulations, which would require a lot of people to upgrade their Title V systems within the next 5 years. So to avoid that from happening, we would need to go forward with these sewer expansion projects. And if we don't receive a debt exclusion vote to fund those, then we're looking at reallocating existing property tax levy from operating budgets to pay for the debt service associated with these multi-million-dollar sewer expansion projects. And that has a lot of impacts to potential impacts to services to the community, obviously. So yeah, again, we can educate, which is our role in the finance department, is to provide information that can educate the public as to, what the impact is on the average taxpayer, for instance. But we have to be very careful about what we say and what we put out there so that it's not perceived as advocating for the passage of a debt exclusion override.
Yeah.
The fine line we have to walk, and that's, we'll be careful as going forward as to how we do this. That's why it's important that an independent campaign be formed to go out there and communicate with the community about this particular effort.
Yeah,
Will-
and
will-
have you
will
or your
council members, well, excuse me, will council members be able to meet with their constituents and promote this?
They can individually, but the council as a group, as an elected
Oh, I
body,
mean, individual councilmen.
individually, yes.
Yes,
Elected officials have a lot more flexibility as to what they can do.
Yeah. Because
But they
they're
also
elected,
have to watch out. There are certain things they can't do, like they can't use town funds to distribute information. For example, so they have, there are some limitations that they have as well, but they do have a lot more flexibility than staff does.
And Mark, have you or your team, have you gamed out what would be the extent of service cuts if the debt exclusion vote does not pass?
We have not been asked to do that yet, Hector, and I'm cautious about doing that because if we're asked to do that, we certainly will. But oftentimes what happens when those types of efforts are done, it's perceived as threatening. Because
I agree. Yeah,
I think
that's
people
true.
feel like, well, geez, see, here's what they, here's the service cuts that they're going to give. If this doesn't get funded, and we don't believe it, and they're forcing us into this vote by threatening us with this reduction in services. And so I'm really hesitant to go out there and do that, but certainly we will do it if we're asked to do it. But we would have to meet with every single department head and say, look, this is the target we're trying to get. Where can we reduce your budget that provides the least impact on services to the community, and go from there? But some of that, it could be very controversial.
Sure.
So,
sure. Yeah, I would have thought your answer would be no. I just thought I'd ask the question.
But back to Wendy's point, though, regardless of whom does it, whether it's individual council people out talking to their constituents or it's a third-party citizen group, I mean, a lot of what you're talking about has to be kind of a very traditional, value proposition argument put in front of your constituents. It needs to tell them the facts, and it needs to tell them why, what happens if this thing does happen and what doesn't. And I take the point about it being perceived as threatening, but the reality is, if it's not a discretionary project, there are going to be consequences whether we fund it or we don't fund it, and it needs to be put out there so that people feel like they've got all the facts and not just anyway.
But I can't do that because that would be perceived as advocating for a debt exclusion.
Understand?
Yeah.
It has to be requested. The analysis would have to be requested,
Right.
not at my initiation.
Who would have to request it?
Good question. I guess it could come from a lot of different areas. It could come from a political action committee that's created. It could come from, a group of citizens who are advocating for or against the override. Maybe a council, maybe the town council could request us to put something together.
Right. Because I think Chuck and Wendy have a point that, people should understand what are the consequences.
Well, I think we can do that generally by saying that, this sewer project is absolutely necessary because the future of Barnstable depends on it.
But I think what Mark is saying, it has
But
to.
what I just want to finish.
Oh,
And
sorry.
I think what we can do is say generally, if we don't pass this referendum, then we will have to look for other ways to fund it because we have no choice. We must fund it. And one of the ways that we will do it is we will have to cut expenses from our general fund. And that's just a general comment without saying, we're going to cut schools or we're going to cut police or whatever. All you can say is that we will have to cut from the general fund, which will affect the services to our town. And I think that's clear.
No, it's very clear. I just, the one of my concerns is that from what I'm hearing from various people is their tax bills have just dramatically increased because assessments have increased. And now they're going to be asked to pay a sewer system. So, there will be pushback, but I think we have to have a strong message to get it through.
Is there a rubric that is in place for the projects that are being funded? So it would be almost like a standard where, because of these standards that have been implemented, this is why we funded this project. And so this project has met with the criteria that's, set up by the rubric. Is there something like that, or we just fund them based on discretionary hearings?
No, we have an evaluation criteria matrix, which is in our capital improvement document. Every year we include in there to show how these projects are all scored against those criteria, which are tied to the town council strategic plan. It's things like, does it address the public safety issue? Is there grant funding available? Is it a high usage asset? And does it directly correlate to providing education to the community's children and so forth? So there is a comprehensive set of evaluation criteria that are used, or rubric, to evaluate every one of these project submissions that we receive, and we provide that ranking against those criteria as part of the CIP document.
So if those standards are in place, then I don't think it comes down to just discretionary thought, but you could use that rubric to show that based on the standards that we've upheld for how many years, or based on the standards, that's why we're approving or not approving the projects.
Yes, every project that does get approved, Jackie, is again, it is scored against those criteria. The challenge that we have is that we don't have the funding available to provide for every project submission that we receive, so we have to prioritize those.
Okay.
If I could ask, how does the debt exclusion get passed? Is that a general vote, or how does that work?
It's a referendum.
Yeah, so it goes on a ballot, townwide ballot, and it just requires a majority vote on the townwide ballot, and if it's majority rules, whatever, up or down. And that whatever that is, since it's a debt exclusion, what it allows us to add the annual debt service for the loans that we issue to construct those projects to the tax levy every year until those loans expire, and then it goes away. So it's not a permanent tax levy override. It's as long as the loans are outstanding.
And has there been any polling or anything to understand how the residents would vote on such a thing?
No, we've never had a poll or non-binding referendum, I guess, for any of this CWMP stuff. This will be the first time we've brought forward a request to fund the CWMP projects above and beyond.
Would there be any entity that could fund such a poll to find out whether it's a slam dunk it's going to pass, or to find out how much of a problem it's going to be to get it passed?
The town could not spend funds to do something like that. Yeah, we wouldn't be allowed to do something, but a political action committee is formed, and if they want to go out and hire a polling company to conduct some kind of random survey to see, to gauge the public's feeling about this, they could. But the town couldn't do anything like that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments about this?
I look forward to seeing your presentation, Mark.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll send them right now. I did one on the tax bills as well. Because, you know,
Okay.
there were a lot of questions on the tax bills that just went out. And it's interesting because, you know, you've heard some people comment about how they've seen significant increases in their tax bills is because they received significant increase in their assessed valuations, mainly as a result of the hot residential real estate market in 2021. We had to bring a lot of residential real estate property values up to the market values. In fact, every single residential property value in town, I would say 98%, if not 100% of them, went up as a result of the hot real estate market in 2021. Some went up 70%, some went up 30%, some went up 20%. We actually had over 7,000 property tax bills go down from where they were in 2022. We're not hearing from any of those taxpayers. Just a few that have, you know, that have gone up significantly. And
Right.
I get it. But yeah, that's in my presentation. Some of those statistics you'll see.
Yeah.
And it'll also show you the major components that impact the property tax bill year over year.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
like
and-
the example you used of your two neighbors.
Yes, I mean,
That was really interesting.
my neighbors on both sides of me sold their properties, and they've sold them in late 2022 for significantly more than what they're assessed at, and their assessments went up significantly in 2023. But so that's going to tell me all of our assessments are going to go up likely in 2024 again, because we're using calendar year 2022 sales to set the values for fiscal year 2024.
And I think you said in a prior CFAC meeting, or maybe you said to me that average assessments around town went up 25%?
27%, Hector, yes.
On average.
27%. That's the average. Now again, some went up significantly more, some went up less, but the average is 27%, which is significant. We haven't seen that in years, but
yeah,
you all recall what the real estate market was like in 21. It was still pretty strong in 22 based on some of the sales data that we're seeing.
and that's not the median, that's the mean increase.
Right, that's the mean, yep.
So are you telling me, Mark, that in 2024, they're going to go up again?
We could see assessments going up again, but Wendy, the tax rate will probably go down again, just like it did in 2023. The tax rate went down significantly.
the rate goes
And
down.
again, over 7,000 residential property owners saw tax bill reductions as a result of that. Even though their assessments went up, their tax bills went down. And that's going to happen from year to year.
Okay.
One person commented to me, they live on East Bay in a house that faces the water, and they said it wasn't the buildings assessment that went up, the structures, it was the land.
The land value, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, land the land, if you look at the total assessed value, however, it reflects the market value of a property.
Yeah.
And that's really where we saw the big tax bill increases, was waterfront property.
Yeah.
And that's what you're hearing. You hear other communities in the state, people are coming out and saying the same thing. It's the waterfront properties. Small little town of Luxembourg, I think they were on Channel 5 News one morning, where residents on some waterfront property in Luxembourg, I don't know what they have for waterfront, maybe a couple of ponds, but they saw significant increases in their property tax bills because their assessments went up significantly. And I think part of it was COVID induced. People were moving out of the cities into the suburbs and paying premium prices for residential real estate, particularly near waterfront.
Yeah. Well, this couple that I spoke to said their property taxes doubled.
Yeah.
Year over year.
Yeah.
How does that impact the revenue to the town?
The town's limited as to what it can raise under Proposition 2.5. So what it does is it shifts the tax levy from some property owners to other property owners. So that's why we saw, thousands of residential property owners with reductions in their tax bills, because these other group of property owners, particularly those on the waterfront, saw significant increases in their tax bills.
So is the total revenue from property taxes only going up 2.5%?
2.5% plus a factor for new building growth.
Right. Yeah, okay. Huh?
So that's our limit every year. We can't go any more than that, but it gets redistributed based on these new assessed values. And, there's winners and losers every year as a result of those that redistribution.
Well, I'm afraid to look at my situation to see if I won or lost.
Actually, we added a new feature on the website, which you could quickly look it up, Hector. And it's, you go to, our property lookup function.
Right.
There's a section called tax information. You can see your 2022 versus your 2023 tax bill amounts right there.
Actual tax bill?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Broken down between fire district tax, town tax, community preservation tax, any special assessments that you may have, and so forth.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other comments? Okay.
Is this a cheerful note to end on? Or?
Oh, absolutely. You can go look at your tax bill. Yeah.
So can I come back to earth on the issue of the CIP report? It's due, I think, Lillian, you said April 20 something, or Mark, you said it?
It's in April.
Because Wendy, you and I need to sync up.
Yes, yes.
And then crack the whip on our two new committee members.
It's April 10th.
April 10th, okay.
Just before tax time.
And when Ralph did it, we did Saturdays.
Yeah.
And I don't know how anybody feels about Saturdays versus evenings. We only did like 2 or 3 Saturdays.
Mm-hmm.
So I would be a proponent for some power sessions rather than more sessions.
For some what?
Power sessions, longer sessions than the number of sessions.
Okay.
Just
all
because,
right.
I'm doing a lot of traveling in the next couple of months. So if we can pick, 2 or 3 dates that everybody can agree on, that we can really plow through things, that would be great.
Okay.
Also, Hector, if you just want to assign us different components, we can begin to look at that.
All right. So let me go take a look at last year's report, and then maybe I can email you 3 and suggest some potential assignments, and then poll each of you for dates. Wendy, you're saying that weekdays are better than weekends?
No, it depends. Some weekend dates might be great. It's just I'm going to be traveling a lot in the next probably March, April. I want to see my daughter who lives in Colorado and my son that lives in Berlin. So if we work with it, I can set aside dates.
Yeah. Maybe could you do this, Wendy? Can you send to me the dates that you're going to be out of town?
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, I can do that.
Okay. And then I'll sync that up for my own schedule. I, personally am doing tax returns starting next week. So
your schedule's crazy too.
My Tuesdays and Wednesdays are busy, but Mondays and Fridays and the weekends tend to work for me, and possibly Thursday mornings. So, but Wendy, if you'd send me by email the dates that work for you, and then I'll propose some dates based on that and based on my review of last year's report.
Great.
Also, Chuck, if you want to let Hector know when you're going to be available, and I will do the same.
Okay, great.
And that way we can work it out.
Good. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other business? Is there a motion to adjourn?
I move.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded to adjourn. Chuck?
All righty, Lillian,
Yes.
Wendy,
Yes.
Jackie,
Yes.
Hector,
Yes.
Neil,
Yes.
and Chuck is a yes. We are adjourned.
Thank you
Okay.
very much. And thank
Thank
you,
you.
Mark,